Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Khurram Shehzad from National University of Modern Languages, Islamabad. Students have repeatedly asked me to make a video on the stylistic analysis of a clause. So dear students, I have taken these ideas from Stylistics written by Laura White. And we are going to consider that what is the role of a clause in the analysis of stylistics. Remember that in linguistics we do not talk about a sentence, rather we talk about a clause. Clause, if it is a main clause, it can be a sentence as well. So in stylistic analysis we do not talk about a sentence, but rather we talk about different kinds of clauses. So the simplest kind of a clause, it consists of subject, verb and an X element. Sometimes an X element is an important part of the clause and sometimes an X element is the optional part of the clause. As I have just told you that we have got subject S, verb V and X element. So S, V and X, this is called unmarked clause. Here we have got James Bond ate the delicious meal. So James Bond is the subject, ate is the second form of the verb eat, and the delicious meal is the X element. Now you should remember this X element can be a noun, it can be a complement, it can be an adjective and it can be an adverb. So it means that here we can have O, C and X, which is adjective or which can be an adverb. Now O means object, C means complement and X means, which can also mean object or complement, plus it can be adjective or adverb. Sophie opened the door. The child Sophie grieved for took another form. So this is the unmarked clause and it has got three elements: S subject, V verb and X, which can be an object, which can be a complement and which can be an adverb. Well, as I have just told you that we have got X element, which can be an object, which can be a complement or which can be an adverb. Remember that I am a teacher. So here teacher is a noun and it is telling us about I, which is the subject of the sentence. So here teacher is the subjective complement. I made Ali the captain of the team. Ali the captain of the team. So the captain of the team is a complement which is telling us about Ali. So it is objective complement. She is very pretty. Pretty is adjective, but pretty is a word which is telling us about she or which is telling us about Aisha, that Aisha is very pretty. So here this is pretty. Pretty is a complement and it is telling us about Aisha or she, so it is subjective complement. But sometimes adverbial element, it tells us something about how, where or when of some aspect of the clause and which can be moved around or deleted. Remember, adverb can be moved around, it can come before the subject or it can come after the verb. So it means it can move around and it can be deleted as well because it is the optional part of the clause. For 10 minutes, James Bond stood. So here for 10 minutes, which is an adverbial part of the clause, it is taken from its usual place and put in the beginning of the sentence. So it also tells us the author is giving stress, the author is emphasizing for 10 minutes. It means there is something very important about for 10 minutes. James Bond stood for 10 minutes. So this is the usual place of the adverb, that it is coming after the verb. But as I have told you, it can move around. It means it can come before the subject, it can come after the verb, or sometimes it can come before the verb as well. So we should remember that in a clause we have got three things: S, V and X. Sometimes X is optional part of the clause, sometimes it is necessary and important part of the clause. If the verb is a transitive verb, then of course whatever the object is coming, it is the important and necessary part of the clause. So here X element is an important part of the clause, it cannot be removed, though it can be, it can come in the beginning of the sentence and it can go at the end of the sentence, but it cannot be deleted. Look at another example. James Bond ate the delicious meal on a table. So the delicious meal is the object, on a table is an adverb part of the clause. The normal order of these elements in English clauses is SVX, but this can sometimes be disrupted for stylistic effect. The most essential part of the clause, that which cannot be deleted, is VP, the verb phrase. For example, sit, heel, lie down. Remember, in syntax, because clause is the part of syntax, verb phrase is very important. It determines that what can come in the place of the subject, and it also determines that what can come after the verb. That is why he is saying, the author is saying, that verb phrase is an important part of the clause, because it is determining the subject as well as the object. The next topic which is explained in this chapter is information, which can be given or new. Most of the time, given information is coming at the place of the subject. Given information means that we already know that it is there. We have read about this information in the previous sentences. Ali plays cricket very well. He is a very good batsman. So he is given. Why? Because it is talking about Ali, and Ali is already introduced. So given information usually comes in the beginning of the sentence, the subject part of the sentence, and new information comes in the X element, X part of the clause. James Bond stood and gazed out new across the sparkling water barrier between Europe and Asia. So James Bond is given, because already I have spoken many sentences about James Bond, but new information is across the sparkling water barrier between Europe and Asia. Since given information tends to come at the beginning of clauses, it can be said that the subject noun phrase in most clauses will refer to given information. Since new information tends to come at the end, the likelihood is that the X element will contain new information. For stylistic analysis, you need to understand that sometimes more and more information is given in the subject part of the clause, and sometimes in the X part of the clause. And when the X part of the clause, it contains new information, it is very heavy part of the clause, then we call that this style is aphoristic style. Then we call that it has got folk wisdom. But when X element is very small, when X element is easy to understand, it is very light, and it does not contain the bigger, the heavier part of the clause, then that style is called childish style. That style is called that the author has written such type of text for children. So this difference you should remember. So when you are analyzing the text for stylistics, you should remember usually the X element of the clause is heavier. If it is heavier and continuously the author is repeatedly using the heavier part in the X element, then his style is based on folk wisdom, and his style or her style is aphoristic style. But when this part is light, then it is for children. And usually S part of the clause is light. Then you should remember that sometimes in the novel the author is making use of present tense, present simple tense, and continuously he or she is producing lot of sentences in present simple tense. It shows that there is some sort of inevitability. It shows that there is some kind of unavoidability. It means that some very important thing the author is going to talk about or is discussing right now. Another concept which is discussed in this chapter is joining the clauses together. For this you can see my video on clauses. It is already uploaded, but here I can just give you the summary. Usually we have a main clause. Main clause is a clause which can stand on its own. So something which can stand on its own can be a complete sentence, can be a complete thought, and it is the main clause. But another part of the clause, another clause which cannot stand on its own is called a subordinate clause. So sometimes we use subordinating conjunctions and sometimes we use coordinating conjunctions. When you are joining two clauses together and they are of the equal length or of the equal importance or carry complete meaning, so they are called, main clauses. So they can stand on their own. So you need to join them with the help of coordinating conjunctions like and, but, so, or. But when there is one main clause and one subordinating clause, then you need to join them with subordinating conjunctions like, because it was raining, I had to put on the coat. Because it was raining, it is the subordinating clause, and I had to put on the coat is a main clause. Authors are supposed to use coordinating or subordinating or conjunctions when they are joining the sentences. But remember, when they do not do this thing, when they just keep on writing complete sentences and do not combine them together with the linking words, then it creates some sort of staccato. Another concept which is discussed in this chapter is analyzing clause structure. The best way to analyze clauses is to begin by finding the main verb, we. It is the one which can't be deleted. Then find the subject as part of the clause, most frequently the noun phrase to the left of the main verb. Again, this is not usually deletable. Within X, adverbial elements will often be deletable and mobile. They can move around. While the object complement will not be deletable, replacing large S or object complement elements with one word and deleting adverbial elements greatly simplifies the analysis. Remember, when you are analyzing the clause, you should pay attention to subject part of the clause, verb part of the clause, and the X element of the clause. I have already told you that what can come in the subject part of the clause, it usually contains given information, and the X part of the clause, it contains new information, and here we can have object, complement or adverbial. Then you should remember that whatever the subject is, it should match with the verb. For example, cigarettes, it's plural, cause cancer. Smoking causes cancer. Smoking is singular, so verb is causes. Cigarettes, it's plural, so verb is cause. So analyze subject part, verb part and X element part of the clause. Then you should remember, if the author is producing long S part of the clause, it means that it is something unusual. It means that he is violating or thwarting our expectations. Then such type of characteristic of a clause is called marked clause. If SVX is there and X element is heavy, that is unmarked. But if S element is heavy, then it is a marked clause. Lastly, you should remember, if the S element is heavy, it means that the text is dense and it is difficult to follow. And usually such type of style is called pedantic style. Dear students, in today's class, I have talked about a clause, I have talked about subject, verb and X element. For stylistic analysis, you will have to analyze the SV and X element and see that whether S element is light or heavy, X element is light or heavy, transitive verbs are used or intransitive verbs are used, or the author is using transitive verbs but not giving any object after that, though it is required. For example, in Sound and the Fury, the narrator is mentally retarded and he continuously uses the word hit, but after the verb hit, he does not put any object over there. So it shows that the narrator is mentally retarded. So if X element is heavy, it means that it is a folk wisdom, it is aphoristic style. If S element is heavy, it means it is dense style. It means that it is, crude pedantic style. And if these sentences are not joined with the help of coordinating or subordinating conjunctions, then it is a crude style. I hope I have answered your question. Thank you very much.